Leo stepped out of the shuttle and looked up at the strange alien palace. It was taller than anything he had seen before. It's built from glowing black stone and wrapped in vines that moved like they were alive. He wasn't a soldier, not a hero, just an engineer. He was sent to fix a cloning chamber deep inside the palace of the Xyranthian queen. Everyone told him not to go, but Earth had made a peace agreement with the aliens, and Leo followed orders. Inside, everything was silent. Alien guards with silver skin and glowing eyes watched him with no expression. He felt small, like a bug walking into a lion's den. A servant led him down long halls, where strange symbols glowed on the walls and the air smelled sweet but heavy. They stopped at a door taller than a truck. "This is the Queen's private chamber," the servant said. "Only you go in," Leo hesitated, then stepped through. The room was warm, dark, and filled with soft humming sounds. In the middle stood the cloning pod, covered in mist. He walked closer and tapped his datapad, scanning the machine's functions. Strange. Muttered, why would they call for help? Suddenly, the mist grew thicker, and the pod opened with a loud hiss. Leo jumped back, heart racing. Inside was a woman, not quite a woman, but something close. She had silver-blue skin, long white hair that floated like it was underwater, and eyes that glowed like stars. She blinked slowly and looked at Leo, confused. "You're him," she whispered, stepping out of the pod, completely bare. Leo quickly turned away, stammering, I didn't mean twa. I thought this pod was inactive. Wait, are you okay?" She touched his shoulder from behind, her voice soft. "Like a dream, my memories are clear." "You are my chosen mate." Leo's brain froze. "Excuse me? Chosen what?" The clone gently pressed her palm to his chest. "I was grown with a bond to one mate, chosen by royal code. Your face, your scent. It's all in me." Leo backed away slowly, his voice shaking. "No, that's not how this works. I'm not your... I just came here to fix the machine." But she stepped closer, tears welling up in her glowing eyes. "Then let me be real. Please don't leave me like this." Her body trembled, not from fear, but from instinct. Leo didn't know why, but something in her gaze made it hard to turn away. He should have left, called command, stopped everything, but instead, he took a step closer, gently covered her shoulders with his coat, and whispered, "I'll help you. But this has to stay secret." They spent the night in a hidden part of the chamber. Leo tried to keep his distance, but the clone who called herself Yelena spoke of dreams, of feelings and loneliness. She was created for purpose, but she wanted freedom, and Leo, far from home, tired of being alone in empty space, listened as the hours passed. The walls felt less cold. Leo couldn't tell if it was her emotions or something else. And in that soft darkness, something happened between them, something forbidden, something that should never have happened. The next morning, the pod was empty, and so was the chamber. Yelena had vanished. And guards took Leo back to his ship without a word. He returned to Earth with a heavy heart, confused and full of guilt. He didn't tell anyone, not even his closest friend. He buried the memory deep inside, hoping it would stay hidden forever. But 3 weeks later, every satellite on Earth caught the same signal. A massive alien warship had arrived, royal markings on its hull. People panicked, governments prepared for war. The Queen of Xyrantha herself had come, and she sent one message for all to hear. Broadcast on every screen, "Leo of Earth, you gave life to my clone. Now, I want what is mine." Leo stood frozen in his room, his face pale. He whispered to himself, "Oh no. This can't be real." But it was, and the real queen was coming. Not for peace, not for war, but for him. The sky above Earth darkened as the alien warship blocked the sun. It didn't fire, didn't move it, just hovered silently above. The atmosphere, the world held its breath, waiting, watching, afraid. Leo stood in a private government room, staring at the screen with wide eyes. He had no armor, no weapons, just one big mistake that had now come to find him. The door behind him opened and military officials stepped in. "Leo, the Queen of Xyrantha, has requested only you," one of them said quietly. "She won't speak to anyone else, not even the president." Leo's mouth felt dry. He nodded. Not because he agreed, but because he had no choice. They led him to the launch pad where a strange craft was already waiting, sleek, silent, and glowing softly with blue light. The door opened on its own, and a sweet but strong scent filled the air. Without a word, Leo stepped inside and the door closed behind him. He sat in the chair as the craft lifted off, heading toward the mothership. No guards, no threats, just silence. Like something ancient was watching him as the ship docked with the massive alien vessel. Leo felt like an ant entering the home of a god. The doors opened and he stepped onto soft silver tiles. Guards lined the halls, tall and glowing, but they did not move. They only bowed their heads and whispered in unison. The mother has arrived. At the end of the corridor was a throne room lit with soft stars overhead. Sitting on the throne was Queen Zyrella. She looked almost identical to Yelena, but older. Sharper, more powerful. Her eyes shimmered like twin galaxies, and her presence made Leo feel like gravity had tripled. She didn't smile, didn't blink. Just watched him as he walked closer. He bowed slightly, unsure what to do. The queen stood and slowly descended her throne. Each step was soft. The air trembled with her power. Finally, she stood before him, so close he could feel her breath. She leaned forward, her voice low. "You touched what was mine," she said, her voice smooth and heavy, "and now your scent lives inside her." Leo opened his mouth, but no words came out. The queen raised one elegant hand and touched his face gently. "I do not punish you," she whispered. "You did what no being has ever done. You gave life to a royal clone." She walked slowly around him like a lioness circling her prey. "Your seed is not weak, your body not fragile," she said, "and now I must confirm it for myself." Leo stepped back, confused and afraid. "I don't understand." "Your Majesty," he said, "what do you mean by confirm?" She turned and faced him fully, her voice softer now. "Xyranthian females have been infertile for hundreds of years," she said. "We created clones to preserve our blood, but none could carry life until your touch," she raised her hand, and a glowing image appeared in the air. It showed Yelena pregnant, glowing, resting in a crystal chamber. "She is healthy," the queen said, "and what grows inside her is royal." She stepped closer again and whispered, "Now, I wish to carry one of my own from you." Leo's heart pounded. This can't be happening," he muttered. "I'm just an engineer, not a king, not a breeder." Queen Zyrilla tilted her head, amused. "You are what your actions made you," she said, "and now the galaxy watches." Leo felt dizzy. He was trapped between fear, honor, and something deeper, a strange sense of responsibility. He had never meant to father anything, not with a clone, not with a queen, and now he was caught in a web of royal bloodlines and ancient politics. Suddenly, the air shimmered, and a door opened to his right. Out walked Yelena, her hand resting on her growing belly. She looked at Leo with soft eyes, then turned to face the queen. "Must you take everything from me?" she whispered, her voice shaking. Queen Zyrilla looked at her calmly. "We share the same blood." "But I am the origin," she said. "You were made for practice. I was made to rule." Yelena stepped closer to Leo and grabbed his hand. "I love him," she said. "You only want him because of what he can do." The queen's eyes narrowed. "Love is a weakness," she said coldly. But Leo felt Yelena's fingers tighten, and his heart told him otherwise. He looked at both of them, one royal, one real, both almost the same. And yet only one had a heartbeat that called to his own. "I didn't ask for this," Leo said. Quietly, "but I'll see it through." The queen's voice rang out like thunder. "Then prepare, human," she said. "You belong to the blood now." Yelena stood in the center of the royal chamber, her hand gently resting on her swollen belly. She was breathing hard, her silver-blue skin glowing faintly in the soft light. The queen's throne loomed above her, but she did not bow anymore. Not to the queen, not to anyone. Leo stood between them, his heart torn. Yelena looked at him with warmth, with fear, with longing. Queen Zyrilla watched with cold patience, her golden robes flowing like liquid fire. "You gave him love," the queen said quietly. Rising from her throne, I only asked for his strength. Yelena turned, her voice firm. You never loved anyone, only power. The room fell silent. Even the guards at the edges did not move. Lena stepped closer to Leo, pulling his hand. To her stomach, he made life inside me, she whispered. Not because he was ordered, but because I mattered to him. Leo swallowed hard. He hadn't wanted this to happen, but it had, and the more time he spent with Yelena, the more he knew her heart. She was not a clone anymore. She was real, but Queen Zirila's voice broke. Through the silence again, then I will make another, she said, walking slowly toward them. Not a copy, not a shadow, my child, born of my blood and his. Yelena's body tensed, her hand gripping Leo's tighter. You want him to touch you like he touched me? She asked bitterly. You want to feel just because I felt it first? Queen Zirela stopped just a step away, her eyes hard. I want to save our species. She replied, Your emotions are irrelevant. Leo stepped between them, lifting both hands. This isn't a contest, he said. I never meant to cause a war between you. Yelena's voice cracked. Then tell her you choose me, Queen Zirila added coldly. Tell her you choose the throne. Leo looked between them. His heart caught between truth and duty. He took a slow breath, then turned to the queen. You are strong, he said, and wise and powerful. But this child, he touched Yelena's belly again. It's not born of control or contracts. It was born of kindness. Of being seen. Queen Zirila's lip twitched, her voice sharper now. Then you have made your choice, she said. She turned and raised her hand in the air. From the shadows, royal advisors stepped forward, cold, rigid and angry. Remove the clone from the chamber, she ordered, and take the child under royal care. No. Yelena screamed, stepping back. Leo moved in front of her, his arms spread wide. You'll have to kill me first, he said, voice shaking but firm. Guards stepped forward but paused. Confused, they looked at the queen, waiting for the final command. Before she could speak, the air shimmered. And suddenly a group of strange armored figures burst into the room, half human, half alien, with eyes like Yelena's. They surrounded her protectively, their voices in unison. She is the mother. We follow her. The queen's face turned pale. You. How many are there? Yelena stood taller, her back straight. Many, she whispered, more than you know. Leo looked around in shock. These were hybrid children, failed experiments from long ago, perhaps, but now loyal and alive. Yelena had found them, called them, given them a purpose. The queen sat slowly back on her throne, silent, thinking she had expected control, but had found chaos. She had expected one child, and now saw many, and she had expected to be the only queen, but now there were two. Leo turned to Yelena, holding her face gently. Whatever happens next, he said softly, I'm with you. She nodded, tears in her glowing eyes. I won't let them take him, she said. Not ever. Queen Zirila raised her eyes once more and spoke. Then we are at war, she said coldly. But Leo shook his head. No, he said. You're not at war with us. You're at war with what you don't understand. He pointed to Yelena's belly. That child isn't just power or blood, he whispered. It's hope. Asterisk. The royal drums echoed through the halls of the Zyronthian palace. Deep, slow, and heavy H beat a warning. A reminder. The breeding ceremony had been announced. It was tradition, older than stars, and this time, the chosen mate was human. Leo stood in the middle of a giant crystal chamber, dressed in silver robes that didn't feel like his own. Dozens of alien nobles watched from the balconies above. They whispered, judged, and waited for him to kneel, but he didn't. Behind him stood two guards with glowing staffs. Ahead of him on the sacred platform stood Queen Zirila, her body painted with ancient symbols, her expression unreadable. She was beautiful, flawless, cold, and ready. Yelena was nowhere in sight. She had vanished the night before, slipping away with the hybrids and disappearing into the jungle that surrounded the palace. Leo had tried to follow, but the guard stopped him. Now he stood alone, unsure what this ceremony even meant anymore. A high priest stepped forward, his voice loud and dry. Today, The queen shall take her mate and bind blood to blood. The child of this union shall restore power to the royal line. Leo felt sick. This wasn't love. This was breeding, like cattle. He looked at the queen, hoping to find even a spark of doubt, but she stared forward, not at him through him, like he was a key, not a person. As the priest raised his hand, calling for the union to begin, Leo took one step back. The room gasped. "No," he said quietly. The priest blinked. Confused, Queen Zirilla narrowed her eyes. "You dare interrupt a royal, right?" Leo took another step back. "I'm not a prize," he said, his voice louder now. "I'm not a lab or a tool." He turned to the audience. "You all want a future for your people, but this isn't how we get it." Murmurs filled the chamber. Some aliens looked angry, others curious, some even nodded. Zirilla walked down the stairs slowly, her voice like thunder. "Then how do we get it, human?" Leo swallowed hard. "By choosing," he said, "not forcing. By loving, not commanding." He looked at her directly now. "You want a child that survives," he said. "Then it must be born from more than science. It must be born from care." The queen stood still, her eyes locked on his. For a long moment no one moved, then a soft cry echoed through the hall. Everyone turned. From the great side doors, Yelena appeared, covered in dust and leaves, her belly even larger now. She walked barefoot, alone, yet fearless, behind her marched dozens of hybrid children and teens, quiet, proud. Watching, Yelena raised her voice. "Shaking but strong, you want to breed with him because he made me a mother. But what you don't see is what else he gave me." She looked at Leo, her eyes full of something that couldn't be cloned. "He gave me a reason to be human." The queen's face shifted, the tiniest crack in her expression. Jelena stepped closer, placing Leo's hand on her belly again. "This life inside me is growing strong," she whispered, "because he didn't claim me. He chose me." The audience went silent. The hybrids knelt, one by one, their heads bowed in respect to Yelena and Leo. Then slowly, some of the nobles did the same. Queen Zyrilla looked down at her painted hands. For 1,000 years, she had ruled with logic, law, and cold blood. Now in front of her stood a clone ever meant to matter, glowing with life, and beside her a human who had broken every rule by simply being kind. The queen raised her hand. The ceremony flames died instantly. She turned to the priest and spoke. "This ritual is void," she said calmly. The priest stammered. "But my queen," she cut him off. "No child shall be made from duty," she said, "only from choice." Leo and Yelena looked at each other, their hands still joined. It was over. Not just the ceremony, but the silence, the control, the old way of living in that quiet chamber of power. Something ancient broke, and something new began. Dark clouds gathered above the Zyrinthian capital, not from weather, but from the giant battle cruisers now circling in the sky. The queen had called off the breeding ceremony, but not everyone agreed with her decision. Her council was angry, her generals whispered of weakness, and her empire began to crack. Leo and Yelena were taken to a private chamber for safety. Guards loyal to the queen surrounded them, but even their eyes showed doubt. Yelena sat on a soft cushion, her hand stroking her swollen belly. Leo stood by the window, staring at the warships above. "They're preparing for something," he said quietly. Yelena looked up, worry in her eyes. "They think the queen has lost control," she whispered. "They don't want a clone to be the mother of the next heir." Leo turned, walking over to kneel beside her. "But you're not just a clone anymore," he said gently. "You're the future, whether they accept it or not." A soft knock came at the chamber door. It opened slowly, and Queen Zyrilla entered, alone, without her crown. Her face looked different, now tired. Unsure, she walked to the center of the room and sat on the floor across from them. "I once ruled galaxies," she said, voice low. "Now I can't even rule my own bloodline." Jelena watched her carefully. "You still can," she said, "but not through fear, through choice." The queen nodded slowly. "I see that." "Now," she whispered, "but my council does not. They've declared you unfit." She looked at Leo, then Yelena, "And if I don't take back control?" "They will." Leo's heart sank. What does that mean? Zirilla looked out the window, her voice steady. It means war, that night. Explosions lit the sky. The Queen's royal palace was under siege not by enemies from other planets, but by her own military commanders. They called it a cleansing. They wanted to remove the clone, take the unborn child, and erase the mistake that began with Leo. But they didn't expect what happened next. From the deep jungles outside the city, hybrid forces emerged. The children and teens Yelena had once saved had grown into warriors half Ceranthian, half human. Strong and loyal, they marched with glowing weapons and shields made from both alien and Earth materials. And they called themselves the Bloodborn. Inside the palace, Leo and Yelena prepared to escape. But Yelena was weak, her body tired from the pregnancy. "I can't run," she said, holding her side. Leo knelt beside her, placing his hand on her back. "Then I'll carry you," he said simply. She looked at him, wet with emotion. "You'd carry me into battle?" He smiled softly. "I already did," he whispered. "The day I chose you." Queen Zirilla entered again. Now wearing simple armor, she held out 2 cloaks, offering one to each of them. "I will not run," she said, "but I will stand. With you, together." The 3 of them stepped into the chaos. Fires burned outside. Soldiers clashed in the courtyard. The Queen's generals were stunned to see her fighting beside the clone and the human. But worse than that terrifying to them was the sound that came next. A child's voice rose above the noise, singing an ancient Zyranthian melody. Then another joined, and another. It was the Bloodborn, marching in perfect formation, not just soldiers, symbols, the future, walking into the fire. The enemy forces began to hesitate. They saw not weakness but unity, not rebellion, but love made strong. In the center of it all, Leo carried Yelena in his arms. Her head resting on his shoulder, the Queen led the charge beside them. Cutting down anyone who raised a blade against her family, she was no longer just a ruler. She was a mother who had finally learned what it meant to feel by sunrise. The battle had ended. The generals were captured or had fled, and the people of Zarantha began to kneel, not to one queen, but 2 to mothers. And the human who had changed everything, the fires had stopped, the smoke had cleared. And for the first time in Zyranthian history, silence felt like peace, not control. Leo sat in a wide courtyard filled with broken columns and soft grass pushing through the cracks. Yelena rested beside him, her head on his lap, eyes closed but smiling. Her belly moved gently. Life was still growing inside, strong and sure. Children from the Bloodborn army played nearby, laughing in 2 languages, alien and human. It was a strange harmony, and yet it felt natural. Queen Zarula stood by the high wall, watching it all quietly. No longer wearing gold robes, no guards behind her, no crown upon her head. Just simple clothes and a thoughtful expression. A small hybrid girl approached her, holding a flower. The Queen knelt, accepting the gift without a word. The child looked up at her and said softly, "You're different now." Queen Zirilla smiled just a little. "Yes," she whispered. "I think I am." Back in the courtyard, Leo was building something using old royal stones and new tech from Earth. It wasn't a weapon or a machine. It was a home. One for Yelena, the baby, and maybe others who needed shelter. Yelena opened her eyes and whispered, "You're not afraid anymore." Leo chuckled, brushing her hair aside. "I'm still afraid." He said, "But now I know why I'm staying." She smiled softly. "Why?" He leaned down and kissed her forehead. "Because here, I matter." That night, a soft ceremony took place. No throne, no priest, no warships above, just lanterns in the trees, glowing lights in the sky, and soft music made from human hands and alien crystals. Queen Zirilla walked into the gathering with something in her arms. A small glowing egg, made in the old cloning chamber but changed. She held it out and looked at Leo. "This was grown from me," she said quietly, but not by force. Leo's eyes widened. "You used your own DNA?" She nodded. "And yours?" Yelena sat up, watching carefully. but the queen walked to her first, kneeling and offering the egg to her hands. "You were once my shadow," she said, "but now you're my sister." Yelena blinked, stunned. "And this child will need more than one mother." Leo looked between them, not sure what to say, but Yelena smiled, tears in her eyes. "Then we raised them together." The hybrid children clapped and sang as the egg was placed in a glowing nest of energy. And beside it, Yelena's child kicked softly, as if answering the call. Days passed, then weeks. And slowly, Zarantha began to change. The throne room was turned into a school. The royal chambers into nurseries and greenhouses. Humans were invited as servants, but as teachers, artists, builders. The bloodborn took positions as leaders, guards, and storytellers, and Leo. He became a symbol. Not a king, not a hero, just a man who had chosen love over power. One evening, he stood beside a small garden with Queen Zirla. They watched Yelena sleep in a hammock with the baby on her chest. The queen said softly, "Once ruled galaxies, but never slept easy." Leo nodded. "And now?" She smiled faintly. "Now I rest." He looked at her and asked gently, "Do you still want a throne?" She shook her head. "No," she said. "I want a future." And that future had already begun. The suns rose slowly over Zyrantha's twin peaks. Warm golden light covered the land where once only cold shadows ruled. The warships had returned to orbit, but not as weapons. Now they served as stations of peace, trade, and learning. In a quiet garden behind the rebuilt palace, life stirred. Yelena lay in a soft bed of vines and silk, her body trembling gently. Beside her, Leo held her hand, whispering soft words into her ear. She was in labor, and all of Zyrantha waited with hope and breath held tight. Queen Zirla stood by the doorway, silent but present. She didn't give orders, didn't touch. She just watched, like a soldier guarding something sacred. Hours passed, sweat covered Yelena's brow, her breath uneven. Leo never left her side. "I'm here," he whispered. "I'm not going anywhere." Then at last a cry broke the silence, tiny, soft, but strong. A baby with glowing eyes and soft silver skin rested in Yelena's arms, the first natural-born heir of Zyrantha in over 1,000 years. A child of love, not control. Tears ran down Leo's face as he kissed Yelena's forehead. "You did it," he whispered. Yelena looked at the baby with wonder. "No," she whispered back. "We did." Queen Zirla stepped forward slowly. She knelt before Yelena and bowed her head, not as a ruler, but as a mother meeting her grandchild. "May I?" she asked softly. Yelena nodded, placing the baby in the queen's arms. Zirla held the child like something holy, and for the first time her lips trembled. "I never thought I'd live to see this." "Shh," she said, voice shaking. Suddenly, the crystal egg nearby began to glow. The second heir grown from Zyrla and Leo's DNA was ready to hatch. The energy around it pulsed with life. The queen turned toward it and smiled through tears. "Then they will grow together," she whispered, as siblings. The egg cracked open, and from within came a second child, smaller, curious. With eyes like twin stars and fingers reaching toward the other baby, Yelena's baby reached back, and in that moment, the two touched for the first time, brother and sister, royal and clone-born. Different beginnings, but the same future. Leo stood with one child in each arm. He wasn't born noble. He didn't have a title. But he had become something Mara. Father of a new era, outside the palace, the people of Zyrantha gathered. Nobles, workers, hybrids, humans, shoulder to shoulder. They watched as Leo stepped out holding the children, with Yelena and Queen Zirla beside him, and the people did not cheer. They knelt, not in fear, but in unity. A voice from the crowd shouted, "Long live the heirs." Another added, "Long live the peace." And slowly, from every mouth, it became a chant, not for blood, not for war, but for hope. The queen raised her hand, and the crowd went silent. She looked to Leo and Yelena, then to the sky, for too long. "We ruled through force," she said. "But today, we begin a new legacy." She touched both children's heads and declared, These are not just heirs to the throne, they are heirs to our change. The stars above seemed to shimmer brighter that night, and the wind across. The plains whispered songs no one had heard in generations. Leo, once just a forgotten engineer, had changed the course of empires, not with weapons, but with patience, with kindness, with love. And as the children slept peacefully in his arms, the galaxy watched, not in fear, but with wonder. From one forbidden night, a new future had been born.